Well, there's been a quite remarkable scene unfold in Nashville in the United States, and the pictures have gone around the world. Rock star Bon Jovi was filming part of a video clip on a bridge in the middle of town when his crew noticed in the distance that a woman had climbed over the edge of that bridge and was preparing to jump. Bon Jovi approaches the woman to help and, in part, saves the day. We'll let the whole scene play out as I bring in my next guest. Brian Clarke is part of the Coast Suicide Prevention Initiative, a volunteer community network driven by people whose lives have been impacted in some way by the distress around suicide. Earlier this week was World Suicide Prevention Day, a day when we take a little bit longer to remember the people struggling with their mental health and the families who have lost their loved ones to suicide. Brian, it is so nice to meet you. Welcome to the Daisy Cousens Show.
Thanks, Daisy. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, look, can we just talk about this scene on the bridge with Bon Jovi for a moment? I mean, it's quite remarkable to see, isn't it?
Unbelievable. It just all happened. Yeah. I'm sure that Bon Jovi was at the right time at the right place. He was doing a video clip or something for music, and it was all happening. And obviously he has some involvement with similar sort of things in life, so he obviously was quite relaxed to how to deal with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about it, because I mean, as a rock star, he's certainly lived quite a life. So I'm sure he's come into contact with people who've had terrible insecurity and mental health problems in the past. But look, just how much courage does it take for him to do something like this?
I think he's probably used to those situations with lots of people sort of being the centre of attraction. So obviously, yeah, I suppose he was aware of what was happening, because looking at the clip, he just sort of noticed and then walked over and just started chatting to the lady, which was the right thing to do, basically. So yeah.
Well, yes, most people wouldn't necessarily know how to respond to this kind of situation. I'd imagine they might panic or get upset, which I can't imagine would help at all the person who's considering taking their own life. So, look, tell us, Brian, what's the best way to go about it if we encounter something like this?
Obviously, through my training, I'll backtrack a bit. I've done a lot of training, and one of the training is through Wesley, and they offer a one-day training course on suicide prevention. It's all about preserving life, and it's identifying. It's based on what they call the SALT method, which is SALT, which is like an acronym, but it's basically looking for the warning signs. So identifying this person. That's obviously this person was on the wrong side of the railing, so that it's easy to identify, and then obviously just, as Bon Jovi did, just sort of make his way over and then just keep it talking and ask questions, not to disturb her. And basically, the questions can be open questions and sort of say, is she thinking about taking her own life? And obviously, I suppose most people would realise what was happening if somebody's hanging off the wrong side of a railing on a bridge, and would probably, first thing would be to ring 000, and if you're in America, they'd probably ring 911 and just probably wait and keep her there and make sure she's comfortable. But you've got to be a good listener. Keep it talking, just keep asking questions and be a good listener until, I suppose, till the cavalry arrives. But in that situation, John was able to convince her to come to the other side of the bridge, and he just walked her off. And then obviously once he got into a safe place, then the front line, the ambos or the police would be able to take control, the experts basically. But it's just a holding thing and make her comfortable and just convince her. But that's what he did. He did a great job. Yeah.
He certainly seems to. And look, Brian, in your opinion, in that situation, is there anything that you should avoid saying to a person who's considering doing that?
Well, if you're talking to him, you wouldn't bring up things about to make them more distressed and make them feel bad about themselves. So the questioning would be just to try and find out what they're thinking, but not to sort of trigger them into feeling bad, which would make the situation even worse. So obviously that's what we don't know what Bon Jovi said, but obviously he's had plenty of experience with dealing with people and probably in the music business. I actually are part of Support Act and I advocate for mental health because my daughter took her own life. So that's my experience, but my own lived experience. But, the music business has a high risk of mental health and suicide because of the lifestyle in terms of the irregular income, I suppose, drugs and alcohol and everything else. So that's why Support Act have a very important part to do with the welfare of the music business. So, and obviously John Bon Jovi being a famous rock star would probably would have a lot of experience with musicians over the years and the problems and issues as well. So he'd be quite an expert. So, yeah.
Yeah, probably one of the best people who's not a medico that poor woman could have run into that day is actually John Bon Jovi, and possibly good, I think, for the general public to see just how to handle that situation. And also, Brian, I have to say I'm so terribly sorry about your daughter. That's absolutely awful, and sending all good wishes and love. That's just terrible. But look, Brian, there are a number of big days for mental health this week, which is really good, including Are You OK Day, which is today. Now, what kind of events do you have planned, and what's the community response been like?
Because we're closely associated with, backtracking a bit, Wesley Mission Uniting Church started Lifeline back in 1963, so it's obviously associated. And then in Coffs Harbour, we're part of 132 networks associated with Wesley across Australia, and we sort of hang closely with Lifeline as well. Lifeline on Tuesday for World Suicide Prevention Day did a thing called Walking Out of the Shadows, where a lot of people accumulated down at the jetty in Coffs Harbour and did the walk, and there were so many people and put on music and food, and we had the local radio, Moffy, who's Triple M, who's doing the whole thing, and it was just so well attended. And it was all about, we had a memorial service. And then today up at the university campus, we had Are You OK Day, which is on the 12th of September. So it's action-packed. Tonight I'm actually going to another Lifeline training function up at Woolgoolga. So it's a big week, basically. So the function up at the university, because at our university campus we have senior college, which is high school, TAFE, all together. We had those three different campuses together, entertainment, food, and just a lot of support organisations around Coffs to do with mental health and suicide prevention as well. So big day. And so I'm still wearing the outfit.
Very, very worthwhile day.
And obviously once a week on Friday,
yes, I was going
we
to say
have Fluro Friday, which...
I was going to ask, so it's a day, is it, Fluro Friday? Tell us all about Fluro Friday. What's the symbolism?
Fluro Friday happens every Friday at 6:30, rain, hail or shine. It's for people. It started from Bondi by a guy named Grant, who was a surfer, and it's spread everywhere, but it's just part of our network. We do every Friday. We meet down the jetty, rain, hail or shine. People with lived experience. Night we sort of talk about the week. We have fun, and it's all about mental health and suicide awareness. It's growing. It's been going in Woolgoolga, if you know Woolgoolga, in terms of just in northern part of Coffs Harbour, for 8 years. We started about 3 months ago, and we're building. And everybody around town knows about Fluro Friday, and I've encouraged our Commander of Police to come along, and also the Mayor, and everybody wants to get involved. And, I have a frame, a picture frame, which has the sunflower on it, and my aim is to put people in the frame and take photos. So I'm quite famous for framing people around Coffs Harbour. Yeah.
Oh,
it's a case of giving back and just trying to help people and, I suppose, preserve life. Because,
yeah, go ahead.
You know the statistics. 9 people a day take their own life, and when you consider how many people attempt to take their own life, statistics 4-to-1 males to females, Indigenous 3-to-1 in terms of the biggest form of death for 18 to 25-year-olds is suicide, and it's all to do with obviously social media and bullying and everything else, basically. So And at the moment, we have it's all about the returned soldiers and suicide in the news at the moment. So it's a big issue, and we have probably an election coming up, and we need to make sure that whatever government or political parties in, that they make sure that they allocate, because Wesley is funded by the federal government. So we need to make sure that enough funding is in place to look after suicide prevention. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is such an important issue, and it's an issue that certainly gained prevalence during and since the pandemic because the government policies were so detrimental to people's mental health.